Well, hello and welcome back to the very latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, today I have got a really interesting topic to discuss with you. We're going to be talking about mindfulness and dating. This is something that's so important, and I've touched upon it a few times before in the podcast, but I thought what I'd do is get an expert in to talk me through the entire process. So today I'm privileged to be welcomed and to be joined by the wonderful Rachel New, who is a dating coach. Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm pleased to have you here. We started talking recently because we discovered we both used to live in the same area. So we got
Yeah.
things in common, and we had a little chat last week and we thought, what can we talk about on the podcast? And we both agreed that mindfulness and dating is a very popular topic and something people would like to understand more of. So before we start, can you explain to my listeners exactly who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Rachel New. I'm a dating and relationships coach based in London. So I work with individuals and with couples. I do online workshops. So I started off kind of focusing more on the sort of published research on the sort of psychology of dating. Because my background was in psychology. I worked at the University of Oxford in social psychology. That's how I started to get interested in it and started blogging about it. But more recently, I've started to take more of a mindful approach and maybe more sort of therapeutic approach, exploring people's backgrounds and how their past might have affected them in dating, helping people with dating anxiety, and kind of just being more aware of what's going on below the surface.
All very, very useful things to teach people, especially during these difficult times right now. And I say difficult times, we've had difficult times for the last few years, but I think people are more focused now and they're looking a bit deeper within themselves to think, what can I do to improve my life and improve my relationships? So I do believe that mindfulness and dating are extremely important. But can you explain a bit more about what exactly mindfulness is to those that don't know?
The $1 million question. So I think there's two parts to it, because there's the mindful practices like meditations. It could be breathing meditations, it could be like a body scan, or anything that you can do to help to get you into a mindful state. So there's the state of being mindful, or mindful approach, which you can apply to all areas of your life, which eventually you want to be doing all the time. And then there's the mindful practices, which you might take time to do, say 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes in the evening, or sometimes people go to classes, so that the people get them confused. So to be able to develop a mindful approach to your life, you need something to help you to do that. So the mindful practices help to get you into a mindful state. Does that make sense? So two different ideas.
Yes, it does. And I struggle with the mindfulness part of this. And
Yeah,
we discussed this
practice.
before, didn't we? And I think you
Yeah.
said you're gonna demonstrate some sort of techniques today. Are you still up for that?
Yeah, we could do that if you're feeling in a open-minded kind of frame of
I'm
mind.
always I'm always in an open-minded kind of mood. I think it's important to always want to learn and to grow as a coach and also as an
Yeah.
individual. So I'm up for that, depending what it
Yeah.
actually is, because I've talked about this again on my podcast quite a lot. That I do struggle with the whole thing, and I struggle with journaling. I struggle to switch my brain off and to be present at any one time. The only time I'm really present is probably when I am coaching, funnily enough. Because you have to really focus on your client, then you have to be present. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
start looking off, looking a bit distracted. They're going to know that. So I think I'm
Yeah.
okay when it comes to that. But within me and having these practices, it's an important thing. But we'll come on to that perhaps a little bit later. We've only got half an hour, so
Yeah.
I've got some more questions for you first before we do that. So when it comes to dating, what problems do you see the most that can be cured or be sorted out by mindfulness and by being more mindful in general?
I think just to be less anxious on a date. So often people will be focusing on themselves. Am I making a fool of myself? How am I coming across on the dates? Does this person like me? Is this date successful? Is it going well? Rather than, is this person right for me? What do I want from the date? What am I trying to find out? So intentionality, intentional dating, it's one of the new buzzwords, I guess. That is a mindful approach, so to know what you want, to find out. So whether you're looking for something short term or long term, whatever, people that go on a date and don't really know what they want, it's not very attractive for a start. And you're never going to be satisfied if you don't even know what you want to start with. So people that have just started dating, they're on Tinder because they're curious to see what's out there. It's like, well, that's not going to help anybody really. I mean, I can totally relate to it because I got into the whole psychology of dating because I'd come out of a long marriage and got divorced. So that's how I got into being interested in dating. So I remember being in that stage where you're terrified to go on a dating app. You're not really ready, and but you need to go through that stage in a way to find out what's going on. But I don't think it doesn't give you a very satisfactory date. So what was your question again? I've forgotten already.
I was asking you about what mindfulness can help, and you answered my question well, so that's good.
Okay.
But you touched upon something else, which is about anxiety as well. And I think anxiety seems to have grown a lot in people in general over the last few years. Maybe because of the pandemic, maybe because we're confused, not sure what's going on in the world. But I think most people that come to me have some degree of anxiety in them. Even the most confident people don't want to be rejected when it comes to dating. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think there's very few people that don't have some level of anxiety. So so the mindful approach would be to explore, what triggers that anxiety, and think about, when did you first feel anxiety? Do you feel it in other areas of your life or just dating? I get quite a lot of people who are feeling really confident about everything else. Maybe they might have had some career coaching or they just, everything else is sorted, but now they need to get their love life sorted. So they can be feeling quite sort of competent about everything else. Their self-efficacy is quite high, but not with dating. So it's interesting. But other people are anxious about everything. So then you would want to address that in a more global way.
That's true. Some people have general anxiety, which can be caused by a whole variety of different things. But we're going to talk mainly about people that have it as a short-term concern, because I think this is what it comes to. People that don't know what they're doing or don't know how to do it the best way or have frustrating experiences will have more and more anxiety because it's self-fulfilling, isn't it? The more that you expect to have a bad experience, the more you will do. And people do, which is why we as coaches come in and we help people, support them along the way. But for many people, it could be quite a confusing time, especially as you touched upon, if you don't really know what you're doing or what you want out of this. So I think it's important to have clear goals, like anything in life, and have a visualization, whatever it might be. Think about the person you really do want to meet. So if somebody comes to you and it's the first session or second session and they want to learn to be more mindful about what they're doing and they want to learn these skills, what sort of things do you teach them to start with?
So I would start with trying to describe the anxiety in terms of what emotions you have and how it feels in your body. Because if you can step aside from your anxiety and not be overwhelmed by it, that's the mindful approach. So you kind of say, like, one of the practices that you can say is, a part of me feels anxious, but a part of me does not. Or something in me feels anxious. And let me explore that. Where's it coming from? What's my worst fear? What do I think is going to happen? And why would that be so terrible?
That's true. People always assume things are going to be a lot worse than they really are, don't they? And it's the fear itself that can hold us back in anything in life. And I think sometimes fear can almost create itself. It can become a real thing that isn't there to start with. And you have a bad experience because of that. So it can be difficult.
I was going to say, it's interesting how you can imagine another version of yourself that would have a completely different reaction. For example, having a bad date or something, whatever it is you're afraid of happening on the date. Another person that could laugh it off and say, "Oh, that was a hilariously bad date. How interesting. I'm glad, let me just think about, why we were incompatible, or how we had a breakdown of communication, or wasn't it funny the way that other person was not able to communicate what they wanted or whatever." And we can imagine having a much more resilient reaction to it. So that would be another way, I think, to encourage people with their anxiety.
Yeah, I think some of it also comes to having a sort of support group around you. If you have got friends or family you can talk to about things that you're experiencing, then these problems can be diffused very, very quickly. But if you haven't got that, and most people are quite lonelier than ever nowadays, and people can't tell their friends and family what they're experiencing, they're going to internalize this and they're going to overanalyze, and it's going to become a bigger problem. So I
And
think
that's where it's good to have a dating coach.
exactly, I was going to say that because I think it's useful to talk it through with somebody.
Yeah.
Because if you've got no one to talk it through with, all you're going to do is build things up in your mind, and then things are never going to go very well. But I think, what about choosing a partner? How can you be mindful in that? Do you recommend things like journaling or vision boards and things like that? What sort of things do you recommend?
Well, I definitely recommend buying my workbook.
Your dating workbook, Mindful
Yeah.
Authentic Dating. And that's a
Yes.
big book. What exactly is that?
Sorry, what
What
exactly is
exactly
that?
is? Yeah, you've got a workbook there. What exactly does that involve?
So it's lots of reflective exercises and questions that you can work through, starting from, I'll just read you out some of the kind of titles of the chapters. So it's starting from, why do I want to date? What can I learn from past relationships? Who am I? Do I feel good about myself? Am I ready for dating? What are my relationship needs? Deal breakers, deal makers? What kind of dating is best for me? So obviously, you don't have to do online dating. There's other ways to meet people, all the way up to, how do I know if someone's right for me? So it's a mindful approach to, on each date, before the date, you think, well, what do I want to get out of the date? What do I want to find out about the person? Then be mindful on the date itself. So taking time to reflect on how you're feeling on the date. Is this person making me feel good about myself? Can I be the best version of myself, etc. All the way to after the date, when you would also have the dating diary, another book.
Dating diary.
Yeah,
Show me
so
that again. Sorry. I thought that was 3D for a minute, like a hole in the front. It's not.
Yeah, it's supposed to look 3D, but it isn't.
It looks 3D on the camera. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So this is where after each date you would fill in, what did you talk about? Where did you go? So you don't get your dates mixed up as well, so you don't get people confused. It's also great, in like 10, 20 years time. Can you imagine how much fun it's going to be reading through your dating diary? And just, how did I feel on the date? Do I want another date? What did I forget to ask, etc. So you're going through, you have your list. I mean, I'm sure you do the same. You get people to produce a list of what they want in a partner, essentials and desirables. And is this, is this really what you need? Do you really need someone to be this particular height? Is that really the most important thing, etc.? And people refine their lists, don't they, the more dating that they do. But then sometimes people they'll be really excited they've got a date with somebody, and I'll be like, well, have you actually looked back at your list to see if they meet the criteria? And they're like, oh no, I forgot about my list. I'm just so excited that I've got a date. So now you've got to take the list with you. You've got to tick it up as you go. Otherwise, it's easy to, be kind of carried away by some of the things that they're right for you, but maybe some things are not right for you. But on the other hand, some people are very good at scanning for the negative and not scanning for the positive. So if you've had a lot of bad experiences, you'll be maybe feeling quite mistrustful. You'll be on the alert for the red flags, but you won't be noticing the green flags. So it's good to catch yourself doing that. Are you the kind of person who always looks out for the one bad thing and doesn't think about the good things about a person?
People do. They tend to look for reasons why things are going to go wrong rather than why they're going to go right. Which is why it's good to have some form of reflection where you can write these things down. And yes, I do have a list with my clients as well that is quite useful. And it's just a guide, because things can change, like you said. Things that you say that you want and then deal breakers, when you get to know someone, might not be quite so important after all. But there are certain things like life goals and values that aren't going to change. And if you're dating somebody, for example, you want to have children. And one particular client at the moment wants to have children. She was dating someone for 3 months, and she was told at the start, I'm open to this. I'm not really sure, but I'm open. Just found out a couple of days ago that he's not going to be open to this, doesn't want to have children. So now she's gone back to her list and said, you know what? I'm not going to waste any more time on this person. So people that can take 3 months or 3 years or 10 years with the wrong person, it's just wasting your time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a question you often get asked. When should you bring up the children? On which dates? If you really want children, when should you bring it up? And I would say first or second date, because if it's important to you, they're not going to get freaked out by that.
I agree. It's too late once it goes beyond that, because you really, and also it's not being keen or being desperate or doing something wrong. What I would do is I always recommend a phone call with somebody initially before you meet them, if you met them online or on dating apps, and then all you do is say to them on the telephone, what are you looking for? What are your plans for the future? What are you looking for in a relationship? And they might say to you there and then, I want to have children, I want to get married. And they'll tell you. If they're very vague, I don't really know, I'll see what happens, that gives you your answer as well. So maybe they will give you the answer that you want, and then you can adapt yours to it and think, do I really want to meet this person or not? But people are quite fearful, aren't they? They're quite fearful of being honest early on.
I
Or
think people have got a lot better about that since the pandemic. People are much more intentional and much more focused, which is the mindful approach. But I think it's interesting that we have this ideal self, don't we, that we present on dating when we're dating. And sometimes people will go along with what you say to try and please you because they want to make the relationship work. So I remember dating someone myself where one of my questions is, which newspaper do you read? And I read The Guardian. So he said, oh yes, I read The Guardian. But it turned out that he didn't really read The Guardian, or when he did, he didn't actually like any of the articles. He just liked to criticize them all. So, but I didn't find that out till a little bit down the line. So, I did ask the question, but I didn't get the honest answer. And, I think the ideal self that people present can often make people very attentive. The whole love bombing thing, can be very keen, very seem to be very into the relationship and really committed and everything, and then they just they can then get cold feet because they realize they can't sustain that ideal self. So it's good to get people to a point where they can be comfortable with their authentic self and not their ideal self. And that's part of the mindful approach as well, knowing and being comfortable with yourself and being compassionate towards yourself, and not saying I've got to be this perfect person all the time. Instead I've got to be myself, because that's the only self that's going to be sustainable in a long-term relationship.
I think it's caused partly because some people confuse dates with job interviews. And on a job interview, you are presenting the best version of yourself that you want your potential employer to hear. Therefore, you're saying things for the sake of it to almost get the job, aren't you? You're saying, yes, I read this book. Yes, I do this. Yes, I work 9 to 5 without stopping for a break or going for a wee. You do that, but in reality, you'll be skiving off having coffees every 2 minutes. That's what happens. But you don't want
what
to.
You did, James.
What did I do? Yeah, absolutely. I haven't had a real job for a very long time. I say real job. Someone said this to me yesterday. I've had 3 jobs in my life. I've been a private investigator, I've been an actor, and I've been a dating coach. So I've never had a conventional job in that sense.
Transferable skills.
They are all very transferable skills, and you all understand that, because this is why I think
I'm the same, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been a teacher, a school teacher, and then I've been a research assistant in psychology, and then I've been a librarian and a dating coach. So yeah, it's all transferable skills.
They really are. All these things are transferable, but I've never had a job where I'm accountable to somebody properly. not in that way. But I work very, very hard at what I do, and I work with people one-to-one. And if anyone ever hires me for any brand deals, I work extremely hard. So yes, absolutely.
You're not having coffees every 2 minutes then?
No, I only have 2 coffees a day now. But it's funny, back to my actor days, all you do is drink coffee all day long when you're learning lines and going over these things. And that's what dating is. A lot of dating is just drinking coffee. And this is why I don't really recommend coffee dates as a good date idea. But that's another story for another day.
I had a great date idea last night. I've been watching Indian Matchmakers on Netflix.
Yes, yeah.
And there's a great date where they go for yoga with goats. So they cuddle the goats are crawling on their back, and they're doing yoga. So that is the most mindful date I can imagine.
I suppose it would be. If you move, the goat's going to move off you, isn't it? It's going to hurt you.
Like getting in touch with your emotions and your touchy-feely sides, how they stroke the goats and how they interact with the goats could be an indication of how affectionate they're going to be towards you.
For some reason, stroking the goat sounds like a euphemism, but that's another story. Why are they letting these goats crawl on their backs then? What's that about?
I don't know. They were doing the yoga and they were lying down for a particular yoga pose, and the goats were just so comfortable with them that they would crawl on their backs. I don't think that's my ideal date, but
does that add to it, having a goat on your back? Maybe that should be the secret of all dates.
Yeah, like a massage, someone walking up and down your back, I guess.
I like that. I should train my children to do that. That's nice. I think mindful dates are a good idea and doing something you can do. So what other mindful dating ideas could you have, do you think?
Well, I think like the idea of popping off to the loo for a mindful break, where you might go and jot down a few words, because by the end of the day you can often have forgotten half of what happened. I mean, I always say to people, as soon as you get on the train to go home, jot down what you talked about and what they said, because we the way we process information is we're biased, so we'll either remember all the bad things they said, or we might just remember all the good things they said and block out some red flags. There's always, everyone's got some fatal flaws, right? It's just a matter of time before you find them out, and then you have to decide, well, cost benefit analysis, Is this person worth it? Have they got enough other good things to compensate for whatever their challenges are? If you're going to get into a long-term relationship, there will be challenges from you and from them that you're going to have to find a way to navigate. So so we're biased in either direction. So it's good to take that break in the middle. I mean, I often do that when I'm on a call with a client. If it's an hour's call, then halfway through, I'll have a 1-minute break. So they've got time to think about how they're feeling. And I can do the same. So that would be another tip I would have. And then just the idea of kind of not judging things too quickly, not reacting too quickly. That's another part of the mindful approach. So we can be sometimes we can judge people about things that are quite superficial. Often we can just have one possible interpretation of why somebody's behaving in the way that they are. So, try to come up with 5 different interpretations of why someone's behaving like they are. And then often, people can be nervous at the beginning of a date, and we can judge them for that. And especially, people who want an alpha male type of person. I want someone who's really confident, they say. But, we all can be nervous at times. So being compassionate towards someone for being nervous and allowing them time to warm up, because, a lot of us take time to open up and talk about ourselves. And you can't get the full impression of somebody in an hour. And they say that at an interview that, you're judged in the first 3 minutes. But I would say, don't do that on a date. Take, unless there's red flags, and allow them time to open up and be themselves. And then, that whole thing of what's the purpose of a conversation? Like for some people, it's to show off about themselves or to just justify their own point of view and try to convince the other person that they're right. But a better way to approach a conversation is to say, what's it like to be the other person? What can I learn from them? How can I get inside their minds and see life from their point of view? So the curious approach. And that can be really good on a date, I think.
I completely agree with you. I think a lot of people do get very nervous and they get very self-conscious on a first date. They are thinking all the things that you mentioned at the start of the podcast. They're thinking, what do they think about me? Am I going to say the right thing? Do I like them? And it's a lot of processing going on. So I think the secret of that is to focus on the other person, be mindful of how they're feeling, to react to them, make them feel amazing, make them feel comfortable, and show a real interest in them so they feel happy in your company. Because there's no time to be self-conscious if you're conscious of someone else at the same time.
Yeah, that is a great strategy for anxiety as well, isn't it? Rather than focusing on what are they thinking of me, you're focusing on the other person. It's very effective, I think. And, a lot of the work that I do with people is to just the little nuances of conversation. So how you react when you find out you've got something in common with somebody else. Like when we found out we had this thing in common with where we lived, some people will get very excited and go, oh, wow, I can't believe we've got that in common. Other people will just go, oh, and there'll be no reaction at all. And that's just so, unsatisfying. So, responding enthusiastically, eye contact, and even just like the gap between when someone says something and how you respond. It's quite hard on Zoom, isn't it? Often people find, I think I just interrupted you again, but people can, it's hard to get those timings exactly right. And so you're forever apologizing. And as you say, like a phone call or a Zoom date first is always a good idea, but you have to be forgiving about those little gaps and interruptions. But in real life, if research shows that if it's even like half or a quarter of a second too long or too short before you respond, that can make a big difference to how the conversation is perceived to be flowing. So making the effort to get the conversation flowing, the little ums and ahs and the ohs and okays that we don't do when we're recording a podcast, but we do in real life. They're really important to create that sense of warmth. And I think warmth on a date is one of the key features of a good date, isn't it?
It really is. And I think one of the problems with Zoom and Zoom dating itself is you mentioned how people can talk over each other. The problem is you're not looking at each other. There's no eye contact. Yeah. You're looking at the camera the whole time. And therefore, you're not really seeing when the person's going to stop talking or start talking. You're just sort of aware of it in the peripheral vision there. So it's difficult. I think eye contact is absolutely important for any date. To be truly mindful, to have that true connection with anybody, you need lots of eye contact. And some people are nervous about that, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
So I would recommend that you look at the flirting triangle, which is old school dating advice, which is the eyes down to the mouth, with the nose included, like the triangle there, and look at the nose. Because people can't tell the difference if you're looking at the nose, tip of the nose, or looking at the eyes. As long as you aren't really, really close, then it's difficult. But I think give them the illusion of eye contact. It's always a good thing.
Good tip.
Yes, thank you. It's old school, that one. I haven't given anyone that advice for a long time, but it's still very, very important, and it just shows. I think because we haven't had so much sort of face-to-face sessions recently, I haven't really done that, but it's a good one.
Oh,
So,
well, practiced.
yeah. So, do we do some sort of exercise then together that you'd like to do with me?
I was thinking that the idea of, as I mentioned earlier, just trying to find a meditation that might be good. The idea of stepping out from yourself,
Yes.
and not being overwhelmed by your feelings. So this is just one that I'm just like, if I was doing this with a client, then they would have it in front of them. We would read it out together. But I guess that's not very easy to do on Zoom, is it? Because our voices will not be coordinated. So I will just read it out, and you can listen and say it in your mind. And
for the people, I'm going to close my eyes, which
okay.
For those
people
listening to this, for a podcast, they'll know that I'm closing my eyes. And if you want to close your eyes as well, and you want to listen to this, anyone else that's listening, you might find this useful. So I'm going to be quiet for a second and let you talk, and I'll open my eyes when you stop at the end, and we'll carry on talking.
Hopefully, you'll still be awake.
I might
going to sleep is okay as well.
Wouldn't that be terrible in a podcast if I fell asleep with a guest? But it would be all your fault, of course, wouldn't it? You'd be such an amazing coach that you'd maybe do that, which would be cool. So,
I don't know. It depends on the intention behind the meditation, doesn't it?
It does. Right, I'm going to close my eyes. And you can go for it.
So I'll just do a little bit with breathing to start with. And it's about breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in, I am aware of my body. Hello, body. Breathing out, I invite my body to loosen a little. Breathing in, I follow my in-breath all the way from beginning to end. Breathing out, I follow my out-breath all the way from beginning to end. Breathing in, I notice any tension in my body. Breathing out, I release the tension from my body. And now I'm just going to read some statements about part of you feeling different emotions. A part of me feels hopeless, but a part of me does not. A part of me feels fearful, but a part of me feels brave. A part of me feels anxious, but another part of me feels calm. And finally, just some thoughts about who you are. I have a body. I am not my body. I am more than my body. I am a center of consciousness and will. I have emotions. I am not my emotions. I am more than my emotions. I am a center of consciousness and will. I have a mind. I am not my mind. I am more than my mind. I am a center of consciousness and will.
Wow. I presume you finished now.
I have finished. I was about to say, when you're ready, open your eyes gently.
I know, but I always have to open my eyes. It's amazing how vulnerable it is, how weird it is to close your eyes during a podcast with someone and to do that. But I was feeling that, thinking it makes you more aware. It does help, and I can see the benefits of this. Because I think I was starting to switch off, and I was starting to get into that. Even though I know that we're recording this and it's a podcast, but it's just a useful thing to do. It is. It just, for me, that's quite cool. I like that. I need to do more of this. I've said this before. I've got a mindfulness app on my virtual reality headset, so I can switch on these meditations and mantras and all these things on there. But I struggle with that Even though all I got to do is put the headset on. I
Mm.
fidget. I don't know what to do. I can't relax in. But I suppose the secret is habit, isn't it? To do this on a
Yeah, and I
regular
think
basis.
and the app that I use, I would recommend, is completely free. It's called Healthy Minds, and it's funded by I don't know who. Hopefully, not some Russian oligarchs, but it's all free and it's really good. And it takes you through a whole program of meditations, and it's just like a 5 minute talk and then a 5 minute meditation, and you just work through one a day or whatever. And a lot of them are active, so you can do them while you're doing other things, which I think is a really good way to embed it into your daily life. I mean, I've really found so many benefits that I even applied mindfulness in a dream the other night. I had a very sad dream. I was crying a lot in the dream. And then I remembered mindfulness and I actually applied it in the dream and it worked. And I stopped being overwhelmed by the sad feelings. So
Wow.
it's one of those things that takes time, but it does, once it embeds into your life, then they say to do like 5 seconds of mindfulness before you open your emails, for example, or 10 seconds before you go into a meeting or whatever. So yeah, you're right, embedding it in, and you don't have to be sitting still, because if you're fidgety, then that's not going to work. You can do it when you're on a run or a walk or doing the housework or whatever. So yeah, and I was going to suggest or recommend, I have a YouTube videos, maybe we can put a link to it in the podcast, which is called Meditate Before You Date. And it's a short meditation to get you in the right frame of mind for the date, to be thinking positively about what you have to offer your date, rather than, oh, I'm so scared, what's going to go wrong, and how's this person going to like me? So that would be a good way to apply the mindful approach as well.
That's a great thing to do. I do a little routine with people, not in the same way as this, but I do it as in a little sort of role play in their minds with a bit of NLP thrown in to help them get used to it, so they become more confident on the dates. They have a really good time. But I think anything you can do, and it's all going to be small steps, isn't it? It becomes a routine, and the small steps add up, and you end up making
Exactly,
big
yeah.
differences.
It's not a magic bullet thing. People
It's
think that
not.
coaching is a magic. You're gonna provide a magic solution to all the problems, but as you say, it's lots of little things that all add up, and you've got to work at them and retrain your brain.
Yeah, it's being willing to do that. But I think the people that listen to podcasts, listen to my podcast, are people that are open-minded. People that come to us for coaching are open-minded enough to think, do you know what? I want some help with this. I'm ready. I'm sick of being frustrated, meeting the wrong sort of people, having bad experience. I'm going to get some help. So I'm sure everyone out there
Yeah.
will be listening to this. And I also presume some of these meditations will be in your mindfulness book.
Oh yes, thank you for reminding me. There's the mindfulness journal, which has 30
How
short
many books have
meditations.
you got? You've got more than me. What's going on?
Just the three. So it has mindful
Yes.
meditations, all nice, colourful ones. So
Yeah.
I do it with my goddaughter, actually. I have a goddaughter who's 18 and she's doing her A-levels. And each day at 5 o'clock, we're supposed to do one of these. And we just tell each other we're doing it at the same time. So on one side, it tells you what to do. So for example, this says gently bounce up and down without taking your feet off the ground. So really simple, tiny little mindfulness tasks. And then on the right-hand side, you have some space if you want to jot down some notes about your thoughts, your emotions, and your bodily sensations. So it's a nice thing to do with somebody else, actually. But they're nice. It's a nice, easy way into mindfulness. Doesn't involve any breathing, because, like for me, when I started mindfulness, I could not do the breathing thing, because breathing is my stress thing. Like my symptom of stress is not breathing right. So the last thing I want to do is to think about my breathing. I want to be distracted from my breathing. So breathing doesn't work for everybody.
You can get quite a lot of mindfulness colouring books as well, which I
Oh
thought I
yeah,
might
it's very
try.
good. Yeah, yeah,
We'll bring some of them out next. Why not?
yeah.
Colour in this heart and see what you think. But for me, the weird thing is, I don't do that. But sometimes I get maybe a game on my phone, some sort of weird sort of gaming thing, and I will play that. And that I can think at the same time. I switch off, because I find that really useful for mindfulness. My wife will
Yeah,
say, "Why on earth are you playing that game?" I'm not really playing it, but I'm able to switch off at the same time and
yeah.
just be present. My brain can clear itself out. So
Well, I do that with the Wordle. There's the Wordle and the
right,
Nerdle and the Quordle and the Global, and there's so many different ones. And that's what I do at the end of the day when I've finished all my consultations or online events or whatever. That is the thing that I do you need something sometimes, don't you, to give you a boundary between work and relaxing. So something
that's
that's
what I do.
completely different from what you've been doing to focus
That's
on
what I
is good.
do.
Yeah.
I've got a game called Battle Cats. It's a children's game. It's also aimed at adults as well. And all you do, you send your little cats out, and they will fight the bad guys who are also cats. And it's very, very fun, but it doesn't require much effort. All you do is press a few buttons. They go into battle. You watch them, and then you just think. I think that's a great way to switch off. But that's why I use Battle Cats. But I've exposed that now. There we go. But I don't mind. I'm very. It's a good thing to do. I recommend it. It's free. You can always upgrade on there, but the free stuff's always better. Now, Rachel, thank you so much for joining me.
That's been fun.
You've got a lot of things to end on now in terms of to promote. So how would somebody find you? And if they want to know more about what you do in your books?
RachelNew, datingcoach.co.uk is my website. Everything's on there. My events, my blog, my books, how to get in touch if you want to book a consultation. I have a coaching program and whatever. So it's all on the website. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So I'm sure we can post some links to those things. But yeah, I'm sure if you just Google Rachel New Dating Coach, it'll all come up.
Nice and easy. Thank you so much, Rachel. It has been a privilege to talk to you today. And I wish you a very mindful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.